think we can get started. So hopefully you're here for getting started with accessibility, since we've been up there for like 10 minutes. I'm Emily Young. I work at UCI in the Office of Information Technology. My team is the OBPPLIT team, which stands for a bunch of stuff, but basically we work for like the Division of Undergraduate Education. We support units. So it's not directly related to like academics, but things like study abroad or like tutorials, which there's something called LARC tutorials I'll mention later. They just are like tutorials associated with general ed classes. So we support various things like that. And the summer session is a separate division at our campus. And on the team, I'm a support specialist, so I do quality assurance. I answer like the support calls. I'm a scrum master, so I lead meetings, and I do some front end stuff. And so I've only been on the team, well, I worked 2 years as a student, and I've been 2 years full time. And so I kind of say this to say, like, I'm not an accessibility expert. I got into this because we weren't really doing anything accessibility related on our team, and it's important. So I was kind of like, I'm gonna like figure out how to do this so that I can try to help people. So I'll go into it more, but that's kind of where I'm at.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay. If you have a question, and when the question time comes, I'll bring the mic to you so we can get that for the room and also for the recording. So, okay, thank you.
So yeah, this is the outline. I'm going to start off with some accessibility basics. I want the talk to be a little bit interactive, so I kind of want to see where everyone here is at, and then I'll go over some of the basics. I'm going to go over like the journey we went through on our team to kind of get started with accessibility. Then I have some like examples, additional information about it, and then there's time for questions and like a group discussion about where you guys are at or what you guys want to be doing on your teams at the end. So. Accessibility basics. What do you guys know about accessibility? Why should we care about it? What does it look like?
We have to legally do it.
That's true.
It's also a moral good.
Yes.
Don't forget that. Okay.
And accessible design is good design.
Mm-hmm. What does it mean to be accessible?
It means that everyone can access the essential content without unreasonable barriers.
I think that's a good description.
Negative bias.
Thumbs up.
Everybody gets a gold star.
I'll probably update this like later. I was thinking of editing, but that's too complicated. Anything else? Want to say about accessibility? So a definition that I pulled from the W3 website, which I'll go into kind of what that is that accessibility addresses discriminatory aspects related to equivalent user experience for people with disabilities. Yes.
Sorry.
And then, yeah, for web accessibility, which is what we're talking about, is that people with disabilities can equally perceive, understand, navigate, and interact with websites and tools, and contribute equally without barriers. So this page that I've linked here also has definitions for usability and inclusion, which are some related terms. And yeah, this in general, this article gives a really good overview, and I recommend this article. Yes, and there's also some like other terms related to it, but these are kind of like the general terms. So, basics. There's laws about it. When people talk about accessibility, this is basically like what we mean when we talk about accessibility. There's the U.S. Rehabilitation Act, Section 508, which requires federal electronic content to conform to WCAG 2.0 A/AA. And on the next slide, I'll go into what that means. At the state level, there's California Government Code, that, which basically says do the federal thing. And there's the UCOP policy, which I've linked here, and that basically says do the federal thing. So I think like on the legal side, basically what you need to know is that there's this section 508, and section 508 is requiring WCAG and other countries too. Basically everyone uses these WCAG standards. So yeah, luckily there's a lot of uniformity between things, and that makes it kind of easy to implement. An interesting thing is that with this California code, I think it's like was updated recently. I don't know if I had a different number before or anything, but they're actually kind of like pushing it a little farther, saying that state websites need to show a certificate that you have met or that you did certain accessibility compliance, basically. Oh yeah, and then in addition to the UCOP one, individual campuses have their own policies. UCI has one, I'm sure other campuses have one, so you can know the specifics, but for the most part, everything's just kind of pointing up. So what does this mean? WCAG, just abbreviate all the time, and I think other people pronounce it differently. It's the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. It is created by the World Wide Web Consortium, W3C, their web accessibility initiative. They're kind of like, I don't remember the exact terms that they use, but they're kind of like the owners of the web. So they make these guidelines, and that's why everyone kind of points to them. It's like I think a worldwide group that does this. WCAG has 3 different levels called the A, AA, and AAA levels. The A level is like basic, kind of in order to be accessible at all, it needs to meet these things, and then the next 2 are, you know, kind of increasing on that, and A and AA are the ones that are required by law. When possible, though, it's always good to include the AAA ones because that makes what you're making more accessible. An example of the different levels kind of is at the A level, you have like contrast ratios between colors, like text on a certain color background, which is one thing, and at the AA level, it's increased, and at the AAA level, it's increased again. At one of the levels, it increases. So that's kind of the difference between the different levels. Like I mentioned, many governments have laws requiring WCAG 2.0 and A and AA compliance. I know the EU has similar laws to us. When I first gave this talk a while ago, I found out that WCAG 2.0 or 2.1 was recently released. As far as I know, it's not legally required anywhere, although I went to a webinar kind of on the state of accessibility stuff recently, and it sounds like the EU will probably implement 2.1 compliance before too long, so we don't do anything specifically that touches EU, but if you do, that's something to keep in mind. The really great thing about WCAG 2.1 is that it has more modernized guidelines. 2.0 didn't really have anything at all to do with mobile stuff. If you kind of look at the guidelines that are in 2.0, you kind of see like some gaps, and 2.1 really addresses that. So in general, I would say the guidelines, make sure you're looking at the most recent one, and these are the things to do, like what is accessibility, and I'm not really going to go into what the guidelines are so much, but the general principles is this thing called CORE. There's 4 principles, which is that for things to be accessible, they need to be perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. And then each of those sections has like guidelines underneath it that goes into like what it means for something to be perceivable, operable, whatnot. So this is the link for that. It's also very prominent on the W3C website. Here's an example of that reference. It's broken down where it has the principle, and underneath the principle it has these guidelines. The guidelines have the different levels, so it's easy if you're if you're just trying to get started at first. I really recommend kind of just doing the legal things so that you get those, and then you can kind of go beyond that as you kind of know what you're dealing with. So you can go here and see which level. This I think links to like full kind of text that's a lot more detail. This page summarizes everything you need to know. And then this section goes into techniques and failures for each of the guidelines. So that really gets into the specifics of what to actually do to make sure that you meet those guidelines, which is really helpful. So this is the page that you need for like web accessibility. On that page, there's on the side, you can go to filters and you can look at the 2.0 or you can look at 2.0 and 2.1 combined, and you can filter by levels and whatnot. So this page is really great. There's so much information on the W3 site. When I started, there wasn't this much information. So it's really improved, and like, maybe you don't even need this talk anymore. You can just read the website. The other awesome thing about the website is that they have a section that's called, it's like how people with disabilities use the web. And it will have things like, this is someone who has a PhD, and then in this sections related to pre-D, it will have specific, like the actual principles, like the guidelines, which is useful for like kind of tying those specific guidelines to a person and like what kind of need, instead of just trying to meet these vague guidelines. Any questions about any of this stuff?
When it says the federal guideline is A, and then, oh, yeah. When it says the guideline is AA, is that inclusive of up to AA, or is that either or?
Yeah, that was something that I was confused about at first. So they're like distinct levels. Each one just has one level with it. So it's not like you can just say 2.0 like AA. You have to say A and AA because there's like different sets, which is kind of weird, but sorry. Which I will note that I think whoever wrote the UCI policy didn't know that because they just say AA.
I thought that AA includes all of A. So if you hit AA, you are also hitting A, and AAA includes everything below. So I think they build on each other.
I'm not sure what the actual like technical way to talk about it is. I was told that it's like there's different sets, and that's why you have to say A and AA. But obviously, if you're going to meet the AAA and you're not meeting A, like it's not going to be very accessible because the A is the most basic level. So yeah, cool. So I don't really understand why everyone always says A. So our journey, as I mentioned before, our team supports a lot of different units. I think there's like 13 in the Division of Undergraduate Education, and then we have 2 other departments, and all of these teams have different needs. And also we know the staff in our different units very well, and so we know like what things they do or don't need, and a lot of our staff don't really need a lot of accessibility provisions. And also a lot of the applications that our team supports are very old, and probably a lot of you know that like trying to go back and make old applications accessible is very difficult, and we have so much stuff that we're working on. Until kind of recently, it wasn't a high priority on our team, and I definitely don't want to say that any of these things that I said are excuses. They're definitely not, but it's kind of like the real world. It's hard to sometimes find the priority for some of this accessibility stuff. But we began developing a student-facing campus-wide application called LARC Enrollment, which is LARC is the group that does tutorials for gen ed classes that I mentioned. And we've been working on improving our software development practices and whatnot. So when we started this tool about a year ago, this was like a really great time for us to kind of start with accessibility. But the problem that I encountered is that before this tool even, I had been reading a lot about accessibility stuff, but in a lot of the articles and whatnot, I felt like I only had a surface level knowledge after reading it. And I knew what the like principles were, but I had no idea as like someone who is with a development team. I don't do much development myself, but as trying to help our developers, like what do they do? How do I know if they've implemented accessibility and whatnot? I do QA. How am I supposed to check that this is quality accessibility stuff? So that was my problem. And the breakthrough that I had was I found these site improve training videos. I don't know if anyone's heard of site improve yet. So UC has a contract with them. They have a lot of other stuff, but I found these training videos that were kind of like the first thing is broken down into roles. So it says like accessibility for developers, accessibility for testers. And that was really helpful for me to be like, oh, these are the specific ways to check. But kind of beyond that, because those videos still didn't go into like a ton of detail, a lot of it for me has been like trial and error with Googling. There's a lot of information out there, and what I really found was that we kind of like have an actual issue and jump into it, and then I would Google it, and other people are talking about it, and you just kind of like try, and eventually it'll work, and you're like, oh. And it's kind of just like learning anything else, so I really recommend just jump in there and do it. But I will have suggestions about an easier way to kind of get started with it. I also think that if you have proper testing, and by this I kind of mean like user testing of people with disabilities, that you can probably see some of the solutions or like the consequences of the errors that you encounter, because you might see like, oh, this thing's flagged, but I don't really understand why it's a problem. At UCI, I've been working with the Disability Services Center, and they're working to provide testing resources, but they don't really have anything set up right now. I like as a good place to go for user testing. So that's another thing that like on our team, that's what we're trying to improve is the actual user testing. I did find an accessibility work group, and that was really helpful too for us kind of figuring out our accessibility process, and there's people to talk to, and they're really trying to spread it to the rest of campus. And my goal kind of is to also get more training for our developers. Yeah. And then, so I want to give this little disclaimer that we experimented a lot along the way, and so the kind of suggestion that I'm going to give of a process is kind of like in retrospect. But I hope that it does help you get started. And our team definitely does mostly like text and HTML stuff. We don't have a lot of like images that we create, and we don't do anything with audio and videos or much with documents. So I'm not super well versed in that kind of stuff. There are a lot of resources out there though to help. And we haven't had to deal with any kind of legal complaints or anything. So for us, like it's not necessarily the same problems or pressure as some other teams, but it's still a good thing to do. And I don't know if I can help you with specific questions, but hopefully there's a lot of information out there. So examples. This is my suggested process for kind of getting started with accessibility stuff. First, understand accessibility principles. So that's going through and really reading like the UCTech guidelines and whatnot, understanding how they apply and like what they look like. If you are in a design role, create designs that incorporate accessibility into them from the beginning. That's important so that you don't have to try to retrofit later. Both as a designer or as a developer, you can research the proper implementation. So if you're working on a page and you haven't worked with that like component before, look at what accessibility stuff you'll know you need to do. And specifically because I do some of the design stuff, I had this one about providing notes for programmers because not everything in the image will tell them what they need to do accessibly. Some examples are you can have text just for screen readers. So if I have like an icon and the screen reader needs to know what to say for that icon, you have to tell people what to put. Then after things have been developed, you should use an accessibility checking toolbar and test navigation manually and zoom in, have like, I think it's 2 and 4 times zoom, and you can go through the page. So this is kind of the testing part. Anything that you encounter in testing, do more research to fix those problems if you need to. And then after testing, do user testing. It's not always that easy, but it's a good thing to do to see that your stuff is actually accessible. And this isn't exactly like a step, but get involved with others. When I get involved with the work group, it's really helpful to like actually have specific people I can reach out to with problems. People who have like done this for a lot longer. And then, oh, yes, area is something that the Web Accessibility Initiative has come up with for like HTML roles on pages, just so that's not too much of a mystery. It's an HTML thing. So an example of following this process, what we did was, for understanding the principles, we have this application, it's going to be student facing. A lot of times students don't necessarily have access to their laptops, so we wanted to make sure that it was mobile friendly, and then that will also kind of give larger flexibility, and that has to do with specifically the principles of being operable and robust. And because it's mobile friendly, we knew that like we need to look at WCAG 2.1. So then we made designs, and we made both mobile and desktop versions of the designs, and made sure to kind of allow for flexibility rather than pixel perfect designs, because who knows what kind of devices we want a large variety of people to be able to access them. For the next step in researching implementation, these are some of the guidelines that I pulled from WCAG 2.1. For example, content on hover or focus. If you're on mobile, and we expect a lot of students to use it on mobile, you can't necessarily hover, so you have to make sure to implement anything that would be hoverable in a way that people can access there. So one of the ways we deal with this is that we use Bootstrap for a lot of our stuff, which is a library for HTML and CSS, and it has blog accessibility stuff built in. And one of the things they have kind of like tooltips, but they're not on hover, you can click on them. Target size, in all the mockups, we need to make sure that any buttons are like 44 by 44 pixels, which is what the guideline says. And this is kind of an example of, we have cards that we write up all our information on, and so I gave you the bootstrap information and what the icons were and whatnot for actually implementing the art designs for developers. And I mentioned, I provided links, documentation. You can mention the specific SR text, screen reader text to use, Flexbox properties if you need it to be flexible and you want it to look a certain way, but you can't tell what it is based on the actual mockup. And making sure like kind of spelling out proper HTML stuff if needed. We design a lot of stuff that looks like links, but in order to use it effectively, the screen reader goes through and parses what each thing is used for. So you want a button to actually be a button, regardless of how it looks, things like that. And then finally, I have the Wave toolbar installed. Site Improve also has a toolbar. It's pretty similar. We just ended up going with Wave. But you toggle it on and off for pages, and it will highlight anything that has problems. In this example, there's like a modal on the page. You have to make sure you open the modal and toggle the toolbar on and off with the modal open or closed. And then, yeah, that's just an example of going through. Make sure to solicit feedback from other people or be open to suggestions that people have. When you do encounter issues, things that the toolbars highlight, there's a section, at least with Wave, to do the code, and it'll highlight the actual areas in the code that have problems. For the Wave example, for these warnings, you can click on the icon and it'll say more information. And over here, there's 2 sections about how to fix and like the algorithm for fixing it. So this is really helpful with, if you don't know at all where to get started, following these things is really helpful. And if not, it has links to like guidelines that will provide more information. This is actually something that like I had an issue with at first. So there's a label that meets these things, and Googling, like you find out that there's some quirk with Bootstrap and whatnot. So this is one of those kind of real world, like getting your hands dirty to try to figure out how to fix it for us. And I just want to have a note on inclusion at the end. One of the reasons that accessibility is important is because when you're designing products, you want everyone to be included, and accessibility is one aspect of inclusion, specifically focusing on people with disabilities. There's lots of tangible benefits to inclusion too. I think someone mentioned it creates better design. Things like elevators helping people when they walk is an example of why accessible design can be benefit other things. It's also just the right thing to do. But it promotes creativity. Having more people involved in your projects will really get kind of everyone's expertise involved and make better products. And for me, empathy is key. You want to think of all of the people who would be using your product or application, and it can really only make your products better. You can't really make anything worse by including more people. These are a couple articles I linked because they have some good things about innovation and inclusion. And these are just some images of, there's a lot of things to think about with inclusion. I was trying to find a picture that had real people, that had a lot of variety of stuff, and it was actually really hard, which is kind of why I wanted to highlight inclusion. It's something that everyone kind of like knows is important, but it's hard to do. Even Apple recently, they used to just have, I think, a wheelchair thing, and they've tried to incorporate more forms of disability. A lot of people, when they think of web accessibility, will kind of only think of screen readers and blind people, but there's a lot of different things involved. Yeah, different gender presentations, different ability statuses, all of that. And then in conclusion, my goal with this is really just to like help you get started with accessibility. You definitely don't have to follow my suggestions perfectly. You should really test things out on your team. We're an agile team, so like it's really about testing things out, see what works for you. Don't do it just because I've said to do it. And yeah, we definitely didn't do things this way. This is kind of like how I wish we did things. Saved a lot of time. But yeah, if you have ideas for improvements, I really would like to hear it. Like I said, I'm a newbie to this too. I've only been doing it for a couple of years, so yeah. These are some links I have other stuff. There's a lot of stuff out there. But questions? And this is me on Slack. You can get in contact with me there.
I'm curious how you landed on the Wave tool instead of Cited Proof. Did you compare the two, and were there benefits to Wave?
So I had them both installed, and at a certain point I was like, why do I have both of these installed? And I think for me it was just like a 30-second decision of like, this one I kind of like how it looks better.
Okay. Was it free?
Yeah, both of them are free. Okay. I'll probably go back and check out Site Improve again too, because I think one of the things too, it was specifically, where's my slide? So over here, it kind of shows the different types of things. And this view is like more compact, and it has things like contrast. On the Site Improve toolbar, when I was using it, it kind of would always have like a false thing for some contrast stuff. And so I just kind of thought it was annoying that it was always there, whereas in this view it was hidden, but I don't know if that's changed. And like, that's kind of a minor thing. It's also there to remind you that you have to manually check that. It can't do all of the contrast.
The Chrome extensions are both free in both cases.
Yes.
The tools that allow you to scan an entire site, spider it, cost in both cases. Wave has a version of that, which you have to pay for. SiteProof is the one we have a system-wide site license for. So it's already paid for.
Yes.
And it wasn't free.
So that's really interesting. Thanks for the tip on the Wave. I think I'm going to check it because I think I'm getting stuck at the point where you mentioned you had issues too, where it's like flagging things and you're like, what is it even talking about?
Yeah.
So I happened to talk to the folks at the Site Improve table at the vendor fair, and I mentioned that, and they said, we have a site-wide contract with Site Improve, and they're like, just open a service ticket and somebody will help you with it. So I think that's probably gonna be my next step. Plus, probably trying this and seeing if I can get a little further with it that way.
I also just at this conference realized like what I had to do to get our spider crawling tool thingy on our site. So that was just me not knowing. So
We use that, love it, because not only because of the accessibility stuff on it, but it will also flag spelling errors and links, which has been really huge for us for keeping our site up to date. So love that tool.
Sorry, say that last bit about dead links again.
If you have the Site Improve crawler crawling your website, it will flag any dead links that are on your website.
The QA module is cool.
Dude, that's cool.
It blew my mind when I realized.
I need the mic. So this is all of this is cool. Like the whole accessibility thing is super cool. I did not know about the dead links. That again, UDL like helps everybody. That's a resource that just universally helps.
Yep.
A ton of my clients. So
Dead links and misspellings.
never mind. My back to humanity. They could care less.
yeah, so that's another thing I don't really think about because I use this so much, but you have to do this on every single page. And it is nice because you can get it started so quickly, but if you have, we're all at UC, so we all have access to the Site Improve license, so it's a really great tool. And
It's
Chris can definitely tell you more.
It's also, what we do is we use the site improved scanner, but we go, when we're doing manual testing on sampling of pages, I would run those through the Wave tool as well. Because Wave and site improved have overlaps, but they don't catch all the same things. You'll catch a few things on Wave that you don't catch in site improved. You catch a number of things in site improved you don't catch in Wave.
Thank you. Emily, I don't expect you'll be answered. We've got a bunch of people here, so I'm hoping there will be a good discussion. So what is the sort of legal level of responsibility for faculty who say have a project that they're doing, set up a webpage to advertise the project and share results from it? When it comes to accessibility, is it the sort of thing where they don't have a legal responsibility, they do have a legal responsibility and could be sued at any point?
I think, if I'm understanding correctly, it probably falls under the state level of that. I definitely don't know that much about the legal stuff, but if they're receiving any kind of federal or state funds, I think that it definitely falls under the state or federal level. And yeah, like I said, like our team hasn't run into any issues, but that's just like at UCI, we have this happen to where we have lawyers, like you can get sued and stuff. And in that case, I think you have like 6 months or something to fix it. So it's kind of like a use thing. If not that many people are on their website, but like they have to do it.
So when you're using those tools and they give you all those error messages, like do you try to like have a like 100% correction where you eliminate all the messages?
Yeah, so on this one, we kind of left these here because it's something that we're gonna get rid of. But otherwise, I go through and part of our QA process is making sure, like, in this case, because we know we're gonna get rid of this, I leave it, but I say like no new accessibility errors are introduced. And if I do, I go and I tell the developers, and I usually will do a little research on, a lot of times it's here, but if I have to go to Google more and say like, make sure you do this.
It's pretty reliable, like it's not like a all day.
The one thing, there's sometimes little things like this where, we're having like a reuse component, and I don't know, maybe someone has a better answer to this, but like depending on which page the component is on, the headings don't necessarily fall, like there's different heading orders. So it's the type of thing where it gets flagged every time, and I'm just kind of like, oh, like we'll put that off and maybe figure out a way to fix it, but like it should be accessible anyway. But the way it sees it as like all one page and not as modal as like a separate thing, it kind of will flag it. So.
And in terms of
Definitely the highest compliance you can get is one.
I'll do that.
Yeah.
Try to do it. And in terms of like the rating, the AA and AAA, is it so we should aim for the AAA, or is it more like AA is happening? Like, which one do we?
I would say that like if you have the resources, then you should go for AAA because it will make your site more accessible. So like more people theoretically can access it. It's if you're overwhelmed at first, I think aiming for AA is definitely like fine as a first step, but AAA is just like
that's the legal standard.
Yeah, and I mean like a lot of the AAA things, I think for a lot of them they fall in like the video category and stuff. So I don't even necessarily know what they are, but for the contrast stuff, it's like 4.5 versus 7. I'm like, okay, I can just make colors that are a little bit different, and then it's like more accessible. So it's not usually that difficult a thing.
It depends on which, the color one is the one that's most achievable.
Yeah.
So color contrast 7 is most achievable until you don't want underlines in your links. Then it gets really hard. But if you underline your links, AAA color contrast is doable. The other AAA items apply to fewer numbers of people and are more difficult to achieve.
Yeah.
They're still possible most of the time, maybe not always. And UC policy is AA. So AAA is, icing on the cake. Good thing to do, it's the right thing to do. It's not required by policy. The 508 federal standard, when you get federal funding, you fall under 508, and that points to, by reference, AA. So AA is the standard. And currently, the UC standard is WCAG 2.0. 2.1 is a new introduction. There's additional checks. We haven't quite got to the point where we're ready to say we're going to try for 2.1. But it doesn't hurt to apply those. Eventually, we probably will.
Are we at the point we're ready to say we've hit 2.0?
Well, we have to hit it.
Yeah.
We're aiming for it.
Yeah, so I put in like the AAA filter, and you can kind of see some of the things like sign language, pre-recorded, most of this is for video stuff. Like in here, there's nothing at the AAA level, it's all the other ones. Enhanced contrast. Yeah. So like it really depends. Any other questions? I think my last slide was just some discussion questions. So yeah, I was curious what tips you guys have for accessible development and what your teams are doing or what goals you have for accessible development.
I don't know whether I have any useful tips, but I have an interesting story, I think.
Yeah.
One of our programmers, Dave Shepard, this year, built an application for our Moodle install using LTI. It was called Evidence Locker. And the idea was that a faculty member could upload a document, say a text file or a PDF, and then students would be able to highlight sections and comment on them in a sidebar. Right? He was trying to take this, close reading and find ways to move it outside of the classroom. This is the thing that some of our faculty are interested in. This was nice. And he built this application, and then we asked ourselves, is it accessible? And we took it over to what is now CAE. No?
DCP, wrote that.
Okay, we brought it to DCP, and you laughed and said, no, God, no. You monsters. And Dave went back to the drawing board and had to rethink some of the interactions. And I didn't understand really what the significance was until I went and actually read through the guidelines. So there are a lot of guidelines where it says if you provide an alternative method, that's acceptable. And so, one of the things that he implemented was it's really hard if you are, say, a blind user to highlight a section of text. So why not give people the option of just opening up a comment box and entering the text on which they're commenting and then putting their comment. Right? Highlight is nice if you can see it, but give them the ability to still comment and just add their text. And it turned out that worked great. It was perfectly adequate for their needs. So that was a case where I started to understand how accessibility sometimes requires you to kill your sacred cows, or in this case, there's a feature. We're so excited about this feature. Turned out the feature was a pain in the ass for some people. Sorry, but we could still have the functionality without the feature. So.
I think that highlights a really good point of sometimes people are like, oh, it's gonna ruin these things that I have, but really it will make you be more creative, I think, and also you can provide other ways if there's no way within what you have implemented.
Chris, did you want to add something to that? You kept looking at me.
I do have a tip. I would say tips, start with something, anything. Find one of the errors shows up you think you can handle and start with it. And just do, one at a time. If you're using the Cite and Prove tool, what I tell people is to look for the things that affect the most pages and tackle those in your templates, if they're template items, which often they are if they show up on many pages. Because that's going to help you boost the score, and that's going to make you more willing to move forward and do more. And the other thing is every campus has a group of Cite and Prove administrators, and they can help you get going on Cite and Prove and answer questions and stuff, in addition to using the support. That's why I can totally do that. So.
taking notes because I'm gonna update this after. Anything else?
I have nothing new to add. It's nothing new, but I do want to use 2 points. Yours was just starting small, because that's one thing when I first got started with accessibility, there were all these guidelines. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to remember every single thing that I have to do, but I started telling you one thing: add alt text to all images.
That's a great one to start with.
You wouldn't believe how many images that we had on our website that didn't have alt text. It's terrible. So I started with that, and it became a habit, and now you just do it automatically. And then the next thing was, make sure that your text and backgrounds have good contrast, because there are some buttons that, use the lightest gray against the white background. I thought, this idea was good. So started with that, and, that's another step that, became a habit. And eventually our score improved for everything. We still have a long way to go, but, I like that idea of just starting small until it becomes natural, and then you can move on to the bigger stuff. And also, your story actually reminded me of a cartoon that we have. We have a website for our student developers called WAND, it's Web Accessibility Notes for Developers. There's a comic on here, I don't know if you want to show it, but it says, it basically shows that at a school that's snowed in, there's a ramp that needed shoveling, but the janitor or school administrator is only shoveling the stairs. And the student asked, like, well, can you please shovel the ramp? And said, well, more students are waiting for the stairs, so I'm going to do the stairs first, right? But then the student said, well, if you shovel the ramp, then we can all get it, right? So that's really good. If you design for accessibility first, it works for everyone. So I really like that mindset, and we're trying to adopt that, as a standard just for everyone that comes on our team.
Yeah, that's really great. If you send me, I'll look for it. I can put it in here. And then, there's an accessibility channel on the UCTech Slack, so you can find me and you can post there, and I'm sure if you have any questions or have anything to share, everyone in that channel would love it. So. I think 1 minute early, so we can just go on.